Welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next 2 hours, we're going to get you caught up on everything you need to know going on across the sports landscape. We have a huge edition of the show coming today. Joey Mulinaro going to join us. We're going to get to have some fun with him. We're also going to get into some previews on the NFL action, chaos in college football. But Caroline, we start with yet another. It's like a tradition in the NBA. It's a week, which means we get more Giannis news because every single time I turn around, there seems to be a report about Giannis and the future of the Bucks. This in from Shams saying Giannis Antetokounmpo and his agent have started conversations with the Milwaukee Bucks about the two-time NBA MVP's future and discussing whether his best fit is staying or elsewhere. Sources tell ESPN a resolution is expected in coming weeks. Is Giannis headed out? What do you think?
Well, and there's a hitch thrown into that as well. Obviously, Giannis leaves the game last night against the Pistons, a game which the Bucks won over the Pistons last night, but Giannis left with a lower body injury. We'll hear more on exactly the extent of that injury. He's expected to have an MRI today, so TBD on what Giannis's status is. So I don't think we can have a trade conversation without also couching it with Giannis's injury last night. And thank goodness the Bucks won last night, because I think Milwaukee fans would be teetering onto pure and utter devastation had Giannis asked for a trade, allegedly, got hurt, and then they also lost. So at least you have a little bit of, sugar in your coffee there. It feels like it's inevitable. It feels like it is inevitable that Giannis is on his way out of Milwaukee, because you're right. I feel like the last 5 years, we've been having this conversation nearly weekly, monthly, definitely annually, of Giannis to the Knicks, Giannis to the Lakers. We are all gluttonous to see Giannis in a big market, sexy kind of team. And I've always just kind of rolled my eyes at it, because can't we just let small market teams have good things? Can't we just be happy with Giannis in Milwaukee? Because Giannis, by all intents and purposes, for a long time, was happy in Milwaukee. But this feels different. And Doc Rivers came out in a press conference last night and said Giannis Antetokounmpo did not ask for a trade. Well, I don't think that Giannis has to ask for a trade formally for Giannis to want out. I mean, honestly, Giannis, having a first-round elimination the last 3 years, has been one of the most patient superstars that we've seen in the NBA. I know the Bucks beat the Pistons last night. I don't think anybody thinks the Bucks are a better team than the Detroit Pistons. The Bucks also just lost to the Wizards. The Bucks are a bad basketball team, with Giannis and certainly without Giannis. The Bucks aren't going to win anything, at least in the short term. Giannis Antetokounmpo is 31 years old. He knows his window is closing at some point, and Giannis wants to win. He wants to win a championship. He wants to win, period. And he's not going to be winning with this iteration of the Milwaukee Bucks. So this feels different. And this is the first time that I do feel like a trade is impending.
I don't. And I hear you on everything you just said, but I just don't think that there's a simple answer to this. I think what Giannis is doing is he's continuing to put pressure on the Bucks to make sure that they're doing everything they need to do to be a contender, and he's reminding them that he's not happy playing losing basketball. Those are all things that make sense. We're hearing about his frustration. We're hearing from his agent. We're hearing all of this conversation about, but even go back to the actual report. As somebody I talked to yesterday asked me, what was really reported that's new? I mean, the conversation here at this point is that they're going to talk about what's best for his future and what it looks like moving forward. But so much of this also comes on the heels of some of the reporting we heard from Wendy about, well, Giannis, whether he asked for a trade or whether he told people he wanted to be traded or whether he demanded a trade, all of these different, little portions of it. But over the summer, he definitely made it clear he wants to be a Knick. Okay, fine. He's not a Knick. Like, he made it clear over the summer. If he made it clear over the summer that he wants to be a Knick, he's not a Knick, and there's a reason he's not a Knick. So now everything would have to stack together in a way today that they couldn't stack together in the summer. By the way, a time that would have made much more sense to make a move. To me, I understand that everybody wants to put Giannis on a team where he can win. Hell, I want to see Giannis win more championships. I want to see Giannis be in an opportunity to be the best he can be. But does that mean that I think there's an actual valid trade that's going to happen this season during the season? No. And in part, Caroline, the other portion of this that I would say is that I think the fact, you're right, Milwaukee's not a very good basketball team. but the East isn't very good. So if Milwaukee believes that over the course of the year, some of their young talent's going to get better, and if they believe that over the course of the year, they can right this ship, if they believe over the course of the year that they can simply get into the playoffs in this wide open East, maybe they believe they have a chance. I don't think anybody's bad enough to just throw in the towel, and I don't think anybody's good enough in the East to deserve to go all in. So for all of those reasons, this just feels like the annual, hey, we need something to talk about. Like, so every 3 weeks, we're going to find a reason to bring up Giannis.
Do you believe that?
Yeah.
Like, do you believe that the Bucks can figure things out? Do you believe that the East is so wide open that the Bucks have a chance? Because I don't. Look, the East feels far more wide open than the West does. I mean, the West is truly the Wild West. But this is a bad team. Like, it could be easy to talk yourself into saying, well, anything can happen in this East. I don't believe that. And I don't believe that there is a move to be made because the Bucks don't have any sort of capital or equity. I don't think there's any move to be made to make the Bucks all of a sudden true contenders in, granted, a wide open East, but to make a move to make them better to be a contender at all. If they don't have any money, they tied up all of that money this past year in acquiring Miles Turner. They pushed all of their chips into the middle to make Giannis happy. That was clear that they were willing to totally fluff the books and invest so much money into this roster. Probably bad investments, let's be fair, into this roster to make Giannis happy and say, hey, look, we're doing everything that we can to make this team a consistent contender. Hey, we'll sign your brother. Will that make you happy? We'll sign your brother. But I think that we've learned and we know about Giannis. He wants to win. And that's great that the Bucks pushed all their chips in the middle to make him happy and make this team a contender. But they're just not. I want Giannis to stay in Milwaukee. I like when small market teams are competitive and compete for championships. I like superstars in small market teams. I'm from one. I root for one. But they're not contenders. And the only thing I think worse than a small market team not being competitive is a certified superstar who will go down as one of the greatest players in the history of the sport. And that's what I think Giannis is. That's how much respect I have for Giannis, who he is as a player, is to be on a team that he's just being wasted in his prime, and the window of his prime is closing.
I agree with so much of the sentiment of what you just said. But as I continue to say with Giannis, I don't think that there's necessarily an easy fix to any of this. You're right. I don't believe Milwaukee's going to turn around and be great. I also don't believe that the acquisition of Giannis will make the Knicks, for example. Everybody's saying, oh, put him on the Knicks. That's where he wants to go. Okay, so let's play this out. The Knicks give up Karl Anthony Towns and a couple other players and a bunch of draft picks. Is that going to make the Knicks better than Oklahoma City? No, not this year. So, like, you're giving up all of this equity right now for what? I mean, it's just such a difficult proposition, which is part of the reason, Caroline, I'm out on a lot of the trade conversations we're here right now, because it feels like there's a bunch of big names, and what we're doing every week is we're sitting here saying, oh, man, they're unhappy. We're going to find reasons to trade all over the place. So do you believe that there are a bunch of dominoes that are about to fall across the NBA? Are we about to see big names shipped from city to city in order to try and improve some of these situations?
I think we probably will, but I don't think that Giannis is going to be, the first domino that starts all of these trades. You can talk about LaMelo Ball in Charlotte. We can talk about Ja Morant in Memphis. We can talk about AD in Dallas. But I don't think GMs are kind of sitting on their hands waiting for that first Giannis domino to fall. I think that each of those individual players and organizations have their own rationalizations of why they are either shopping or holding on to their certified superstars. Like in Memphis, I think that they would want to. They'd be willing to move on from Ja Morant, understanding that he is a certified superstar in this league, but also understanding that, hey, it's run its course here. It's time for him to go. I'm sure Memphis would be ready to move on from Ja if and when the right trade package presents itself. So, LaMelo, I think that the Hornets probably want to see what they can get out of their young star. I don't think that we're at the same point with LaMelo as Ja is with Memphis. Same thing with AD. In order to trade a guy, you have to have a trade partner. And if I'm a GM in the NBA, I'm not giving up any sort of draft capital for AD. When he's healthy, he's great, but that's when. And that's a really big if. And he hasn't been healthy enough for me to give up tangible, legitimate assets for AD's for AD's efforts. Same thing with Giannis. Look, Giannis to the Knicks, that would be the number one story on every sports show across America. I don't see it because I don't know what the Knicks have to trade in return that would make the trade worthwhile from Milwaukee. I view Milwaukee that they can say, look, we're not winning now. We're not going to win with Giannis. So we have to roll the dice and say, can we win without him? Can we win with the assets that we would get in return for trading a superstar in his prime? That would be, the approach for me. And I just don't think the Knicks have that same kind of value. Honestly, Fitz, I would love to see Giannis with the Spurs. Can you imagine Victor Wembanyama and Giannis? That would be the most terrifying duo in the NBA at the rim. And then that kind of alleviates some of the injury concerns about Wemby. Look, if he needs to rest, if he's out for a couple of weeks, well, Giannis can carry a brunt of the load. And the Spurs can continue to build for a championship and not kind of ebb and flow and go as Wemby and his health goes.
Yeah, I think part of this, to your point, is that for me, so many of the players that we're talking about in these trades are either flawed or the teams that they'd be going to are flawed. You're right. Giannis to the Spurs would be absolutely beautiful. I also look at it and say, I think that the Bucks are going to have to make a decision here. And this is where everybody says, well, get rid of him now because if you wait to the summer, then he's just going to leave. Well, I don't believe that the Bucks believe that still at this point. I think the Bucks believe that they can keep Giannis in the building. So I don't think they're willing to give up on the prospect that Giannis would be there long term. I don't think AD has anything worth left trading for. I think there's a ton of baggage on Zion when you look at the injuries. I don't think Ja and LaMelo are easily moved from where they are to other places. It's complicated. You could talk me into Harden maybe going somewhere, but for what? So I think what happens right now is that we want to play 2K. Like we as a general basketball population, we just want to turn around and say, okay, I found a video game way to do this. Okay. Well, this is my question for all of it. If you're going to leverage your future for any of the players that we're talking about, will it make you better than Oklahoma City? And if the answer is no, then my question is, why are you leveraging your future for it? So we'll see how it plays out. In the meantime, we did have a huge night last night for Jamal Murray. Speaking of superstars in the NBA, Jamal Murray absolutely went off. The Nuggets get a big win over Indy, 19 of 25 for the field. 10 of 11 from three. So that's 10 of 11 from three. 52 points, which is usually impressive. But 50 points this year in the NBA just feels like you get a 50 burger. You get a 50 burger. But Jamal, absolutely incredible. And as much as I keep talking about OKC, Caroline, let's acknowledge the Nuggets continue to play really solid basketball. And they've got the star power. They've got the championship pedigree. The Nuggets should be on everybody's radar.
1000%. Look, we talked about this yesterday about the dynasty that feels like is brewing in Oklahoma City, because not only do they have a championship team right now, a young team right now, they have all of the draft capital over the next several years to continue to build a championship roster. But I always said, and I couch that with, let's pump the brakes. Let's not crown the Thunder anything that they're not. Let's not give them any sort of, moniker that they haven't quite earned yet. In order to be a dynasty, you need to win multiple championships. The Thunder have won one. That's the first domino to fall. But the only thing standing in the way of Oklahoma City becoming a dynasty and going back to back isn't anything that's going on in Oklahoma City. It's Denver. It's the Lakers, it's the Rockets, and as long as Denver has one of the best Batman and Robin duos in the West, and that's exactly what we have with Joker and Jamal Murray, it's not going to be the easiest, most rosy path for the Thunder to go back-to-back or to get through this West unscathed.
No, you're 1,000% right. And the Nuggets are going to have a solid regular season that really won't matter until we get to the playoffs, right? Like the question is going to be, what does Oklahoma City look like against the Nuggets in a 7-game series? I can't wait to see it because clearly they've separated themselves as two of the best teams in the NBA. And it's a reminder that just like sometimes we have to pinch ourselves and say, hey, wait, there are other teams in recent memory like the Bucks that have won a championship. There's a very recent team that has won a championship in Denver that would like a little bit more respect put on their names, and rightfully so. All right, let's continue to break it down over the course of the next couple hours. Got a lot to get to. Coming up next, what are the most chaotic outcomes that we could get this weekend that would rock college football? We'll tell you about it next. We've got the possibility for chaos everywhere this weekend because it's not just a normal college football championship game weekend. No, there are outcomes this weekend that could absolutely rock everybody that's sitting around just trying to find their way into the playoffs, and we will break it down for you, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. All right, so let's take a look at some of the most chaotic outcomes. Yeah, which
we are her,
I'm the lover.
She's us.
I mean, I you know me. I want everybody to be losing their minds this weekend. I feel like that. Like this girl, talks to my soul. There's no doubt about it. Let's look at some of the outcomes that are out there. Figure out what the most chaotic, probable outcome, possible outcome is out of each of these games. So let's start with the Big Ten. All right, the Big Ten is the matchup of the millennium. It is the number 1 team versus the number 2 team. Ohio State, Indiana. What's the most chaotic outcome that we could get out of this?
Yeah, this is the closest thing that I think we have to a Super Bowl before we get to the national championship game. I really don't think that there is a result from this game that is going to cause sheer and utter chaos. Because I think that both of these two teams have a first-round bye secured. And they've earned it. They've deserved it. What they've done this season, they have earned a first-round bye. So whether it's a total clapping from Indiana by Ohio State or vice versa, whatever it is, if it's a close game, if it's a blowout, so on and so forth, of course, it's dependent on what happens around them, but I don't think there's a true chaos scenario that could come from this game, short of Ryan Day leaving Ohio State to take the Penn State job, and then Curt Cignetti leaves Indiana to take the Ohio State job, which we know would literally never happen. But that's, I think, the biggest source of chaos that we could get from this game is just continued coaching carousel chaos, because we haven't had enough of it, Fitz, clearly. More chaos with college coaches.
Let me pitch you one chaotic scenario here. Let's say in this situation, Indiana, and I'm going with Indiana because I think that Indiana gets less brand benefit of the doubt, which shouldn't matter, but it does. So let's say Indiana loses 45-0. Like Ohio State just comes in and boat races Indiana. Indiana's strength of schedule right now is 45th in the country, right? So is there a world where Indiana drops from number 2 out of a first-round bye? They'd have to drop below basically Oregon. Oregon's strength of schedule, wildly, to me, is 16th. I was a little surprised by that number. So Oregon's strength of schedule, 16th. Maybe is there a world where if Indiana just gets trucked, I don't think this will happen, but could they fall far enough that they don't get a first-round bye?
Remember who beat Oregon?
Yeah,
Indiana.
Yeah, you're right.
Indiana went
to
to Oregon and beat Indiana went to Oregon and beat
Oregon.
and it was an absolute clapping. So, and despite Miami,
What if Ohio
Notre
State
Dame,
gets
that's like
clapped
the
then?
one.
If Ohio State gets clapped, they can't fall. They won't fall that far.
And it's really hard, and I know that we're playing the hypothetical game. It's just so hard for me to envision either of these two teams getting clapped. Like Indiana last year, I could buy into it because they didn't have that Oregon caliber of a win to hold up their resume, but this year they do, and this year they're better. So I don't believe it. I don't buy into that. I think that the committee, unless it's Notre Dame and Miami, values head to head. Like Georgia's above Ole Miss because Georgia has the head to head over Ole Miss. That those things matter. When you have the same record, I think a head to head has to matter. And the committee has shown us, unless you're Miami, head to head matters.
Sorry, Miami. What about the SEC
Sorry,
championship game here? Like, this is my agent of chaos scenario here. Is that in a revenge moment, Georgia turns around and just absolutely destroys Alabama. Again, we're just playing with these hypotheticals here. If Georgia goes in and trucks Alabama and Alabama picks up their third loss, does it drop Alabama low enough? Like my chaotic situation here is Alabama gets absolutely decimated and they fall to 11 and then they get bid thieved and they are stolen their way out of the playoffs.
I think the committee wants to be very careful about overly penalizing teams who play in a conference championship versus teams that are watching from their homes on their couch. So I think the committee should approach that with a lot of caution because Alabama's already beaten this Georgia team in Athens. Let's not forget about that. Conference championship games shouldn't be the end-all be-all. I think the committee told us in the most recent rankings that they want Alabama to be safe. That's the reason why they had Alabama leapfrogging Notre Dame, is they didn't want Alabama to be vulnerable. They wanted it to be a Notre Dame team that's not going to be playing on conference championship weekend. So I think even in a loss, if it's a 40-point thumping, maybe we can reconsider. I think we should reconsider. I think how you lose should matter. But if it's a competitive game, which I think it's going to be, Alabama's safe. But if Alabama beats Georgia, I think Alabama gets a first-round bye.
With that would be stunning to me. I'm speechless. I didn't see that coming. That sort of a jump from 9 to 4 would be. Because
you would have an 11-2 Alabama team with 2 wins over the number 3 team in the country and the SEC championship. I don't think that's stunning.
But to me, if I can't justify lowering them literally 2 spots in the rankings if they get trucked, how can I justify raising them 5 spots in the rankings if they win? Like either conference championship games matter or they don't. So if getting your ass kicked isn't enough to keep you out of the playoffs, then how is winning it enough to raise you that many positions? You're talking about, because Alabama's at 9, they would have to rise to the top 4 to get a bye. That's a meteoric rise out of a win.
A conference championship, an SEC championship over the number 3 team in the country. Like that has to matter. And I hear you on, okay, well, if you lose, it doesn't matter. But if you win, it does. I totally hear you on that. But I think we also have to consider the committee and how sensitive they should be to overly penalizing teams who compete in conference championship games. Like if it's a close loss, I think that Alabama stays put.
But if you can't overly penalize, you can't overly reward. But you still can't overly reward.
Twice they will have beaten Georgia. They beat the number 3 team in the country. They're the champion of one of the most competitive conferences in all of college football. And maybe there would have to be some things to go right around Alabama, like Texas Tech losing to BYU in the Big 12 championship game. But I think that it would be fair and justified. I would not be floored, and I would not disagree with the committee for giving Alabama a first-round bye for beating Georgia. And of course, how it happens has to matter. And if Alabama beats Georgia by double digits, I'm fine with it. If it's a very narrow win and it's the difference of a walk-off field goal or a missed field goal here and there, then again, how you lose and how you win has to matter. But I don't think that it would be unfair at all for Alabama to get that nod.
To me, that you'd be moving Alabama above Texas A&M. You'd be moving Alabama above Ole Miss for the credit for that win. They already have a win over Georgia right now, and they're not viewed that differently by the committee. So, the committee's got to do it one way or the other. If you're telling me that,
but doing it twice,
But still, if you're like, to me, if you're telling me that the committee will leave them out with the loss or move them way up with the win, I buy that. If they won't fall for a loss, then they can't rise for a win to me. That's that. So let's get to the next one then in the Big 12, because you just mentioned a little bit of it. Like, there is a chance for real chaos to come in the Big 12 in the form of what happens in that championship game, right?
Yeah, I mean, BYU winning that game is the ultimate chaos scenario. Because if BYU wins that game, you're not leaving Texas Tech out. Texas Tech, I think, would fall out of having a first-round bye. Should fall out of having a first-round bye. But BYU wins, and then that creates, I mean, that's a bid thief, really. So that kind of creates a really chaotic scenario, let's say, for the ACC. If Duke wins and we'll talk about the ACC championship game a little bit more, because it's a gross one, for sure. If Duke wins the ACC championship and BYU wins the Big 12 championship, there is a legitimate chance that the ACC gets left out of the college football playoff entirely, because the Big 12, which maybe previously felt like a one bid league, now all of a sudden it's two. And Duke will not be one of the 5 highest ranked conference champions. So you're looking at a JMU, if they win their conference championship, getting in over the ACC. So if BYU wins the Big 12 championship, things all of a sudden get really bloated, and things all of a sudden get really iffy for Notre Dame. I would say Miami is totally and completely out of it. But Notre Dame, if BYU beats Texas Tech, Notre Dame will not get in the college football playoff. And I don't think the ACC will either.
Yeah, and I think that's the most stunning part of it for so many people. Like, you're right, and even our friend Mike Golick Jr., who knows Notre Dame better than anybody, has been tweeting loudly for the better course of since the last rankings came out. This is simple. If BYU wins, Notre Dame is not going to the college football playoff, and that is such a weird statement to make, especially because this is a wild spot that BYU is in. If they win this game, they're going to the college football playoff, and they're keeping Notre Dame out. If they lose this game, they're likely not going to the college football playoff at all. So BYU is really the holder of all of the chaos cards for so many of these programs, and that doesn't even get into the Miamis of the world, right? So I think you're right. That's why this is so precarious. Now, I should note that, Texas Tech is a favorite in this game, and in the eyes of many, a better football team, but I still think this is going to be a hell of a game. We've talked about what are possible or probable outcomes. To me, it's not improbable that BYU could win that football game.
No, not at all. No, the first time they met in the regular season, it was a butt whooping. But because Texas Tech is just that good. Texas Tech is an absolute
100%.
wagon. I think Texas Tech is the most undervalued and under-discussed legitimate national championship contender that we have in this entire field. So BYU is going to have their work cut out for them. But I think there's a certain kind of galvanizing and, electric feeling that you get when your head coach and Kalani Sitake is in a very public flirting with Penn State to potentially take that job, and he says, I'm not effing leaving, I'm sticking around and I'm staying. I think that could be, a powerful kind of galvanizing force here for this BYU team. Peek behind the curtain, I'm going to take Texas Tech to win it. But if BYU does, if you're an agent of chaos like we are here on this program, you're rooting like heck for BYU to win that game.
Yeah, I think Texas Tech wins. I want BYU to win. I just want things to get weird for everybody. All right, we'll get to the ACC championship game in a little bit, because that could change the entire future of college football. We'll tell you why. But coming up next, we got to get to one of the biggest matchups in the NFL this weekend. We're going to talk Texans and Chiefs with an expert that knows. We'll do it next on Yahoo Sports Daily. The Texans coach D'Amico Ryans is 13-4 against divisional opponents, the best record of any NFL team versus its own division since he was hired in 2023. That's a stat. That's actually a really great stat. So we're going to break down some of the recent success right now. He's the sports editor for the Houston Chronicle, Eddie Maisonet. Eddie, really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for hanging out with us. Let's start with D'Amico because he's a defensive-minded head coach, and right now there seems to be a logic that you're supposed to hire an offensive guy. How did D'Amico buck that trend?
Yeah, I mean, D'Amico's all gas, no brakes. I mean, since being here, it's been very clear that he's got players to absolutely buy in. They talk about swarm all the time, and in every press conference, every interview, swarm mentality, being unified as an entire unit, and like going to the wall for your brother. Like, it's just everything that D'Amico's been preaching. It's been really cool. The Texas players have recently been going into the archives. The Texan social media brought out the old D'Amico Ryan celebration from back at the University of Alabama doing the sledgehammer. And now you can see the Texas players recreating the celebration during big plays. And I actually think it's a real testament to D'Amico. He doesn't really get discussed nearly as much as far as the elite coaches is concerned. And given the situation and the circumstances of the start of the season, breaking in a new offensive coordinator, dealing with a disheveled offensive line, and then your quarterback goes out and gets hurt. Like the fact that the team has not wavered and they're in a position to still potentially become AFC South champions again, it's right there in front of them.
I know I feel incredibly validated and a little bit, I guess, at least, because my defensive player of the year pick at the beginning of the season was Will Anderson. And if there was a guy not named Myles Garrett in the league, then maybe Will Anderson would be getting a whole lot more of a nod for defensive player of the year. You add him and Daniil Hunter and Derek Stingley Jr. in the back end. This defense is stifling. I think we need to talk about it as being even better than the Broncos, as one of the best, if not the best in the league. What makes this defense so elite?
Yeah, I mean, you spoke so highly about them. I mean, you did the work for me. I think that the thing that I see more than anything else, last week against the Colts was so fascinating because you think of Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter as these two jackals as pass rushers, right? And then what did Will Anderson do? Like, he's rushing right through the middle. He's plowing through the center and the guard, causing chaos. And he's starting to remind folks he can be a multidimensional player on that defensive line. And so when you've got Anderson, Daniil, you've got Azeez Al-Shaair, roaming the field, playing sideline to sideline. And then you think about anytime that ball goes up in the air, it's not only Derek Stingley, but you've got Kamari Lassiter, you've got Kalen Bullock, I like to think about the Texans secondary. I'm about to go deep nerd wrestling reference here, but they remind me of like the OG bloodline. You've got Derek Stingley, who's over here acting like Roman Reigns. He doesn't even have to say anything. Kalen Bullock, Kamari Lassiter, Jalen Petrie, they go out there and do all the dirty work for him. They don't even throw at Stingley, and people are now starting to think, oh, Bullock might be not just an all-pro bowler, but an all-pro player. Lassiter the same, and Petrie being back and healthy has been huge. And so you can get that type of pressure on the quarterback. You got guys out there that can not just go deflect balls, but they can go take the ball away and go advance the ball for the offense. That becomes really scary. And I think the Texans have proven themselves. They are, if not the best, one of the best defenses in the NFL right now.
Brother, I'm reminded how old I am when you say old school and you go bloodlines. I thought you were going to give me like an 80s tag team, but that's fine. It's fine. But it's still semi-old school. Caroline's completely lost. The number of pro wrestling references I made.
You lost me.
And she just looks at me and she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's fine. It's fine. All right, so let me drill back into one thing you just said, though, because you mentioned maybe people don't pay as much attention to D'Amico, and we've mentioned all of these names. Why are the Texans, considering the personalities they have, and they have a young quarterback that everybody fell in love with, why are they not a bigger national talking point?
I'm so glad. I was so prepared to talk about this. Thank you. So I was driving in the Toyota Tundra this morning, hauling my backside up the highway, bombing up 610, and I was reminded of a couple of things. The Houston Texans, let's talk about Texas Chiefs. They haven't won against the Chiefs in 6 years. It's been 2019 when number 4, the man whose name I won't use, but number 4 was quarterback here, and they skimmed by the Chiefs 31-24. That was 6 years ago. And I think the thing about the Houston Texans, especially with the Chiefs in particular, is they don't have the biggest win against the biggest team in the biggest situations. Yes, I just said they're the 2-time defending AFC South champions, but I think in the pantheon of how we view the divisions and power players, the AFC South doesn't measure up in the same way. And I think for the last couple of years, we've been waiting for the Texans. The people in Houston have been waiting to put the Texans in the same tier as Chiefs, Ravens, Bills in that class, and they just haven't been able to cross that threshold yet. I think beating the Chiefs would go a long way in giving them that type of validation. And it's funny because if you look at the state of the AFC right now, the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Ravens are not the top of the class right now. So there's an interesting situation here where not only can the Texans potentially get themselves back atop the AFC South, but the pathway to, should I not even say it, Super Bowl contention doesn't feel as arduous as maybe it did a couple of years ago.
You said it. You put it out there. Are the Texans Super Bowl contenders?
I think this is a season, the 2025 season, is so fascinating because, now I can go old school again, right? Let's think about that Baltimore Ravens team that was all defense, just good enough offense, right? That historic Bucks team that was so good defensively, and Brad Johnson got them to the finish line. We've seen the blueprint where if you can be so utterly dominant on defense, and the offense can if they can just get you 17, if they could just get you maybe 21, like you start thinking like, okay, we can eke this out because we've got enough dudes on that defensive side of the ball to get it. I think what's happened offensively with the Texans has been fascinating though, because they brought in Nick Caley as a new offensive coordinator, and CJ Stroud, he's coming back. He was a little dinged up, and it felt like they were trying to fix the plane in midair with the offense. And I think oddly, Davis Mills, one of the better backups in the NFL, he knows who he is as a quarterback. And I think in an odd way, he stabilized the offense of like, let's stay in third gear. Let's do the things we know we can do and stick to that. And let's go try to get 21 points. And CJ Stroud now coming back into the car that's already, driving the speed limit and nothing more. The offense looked competent. And we know CJ Stroud is an all-world potential quarterback. But for what this team needs, they need competency. They need somebody to keep the car in between the lanes. We don't need to get a speeding ticket. We're not in a rush to get there. We just got to get to the finish line. And if Stroud can do that, continue to get healthy, the offensive line can hopefully just get 1% better every day. I think there's a real possibility that at the very least, this is an AFC championship caliber roster and team.
But how did we go from a couple of years ago, CJ Stroud had the best rookie season we'd ever seen, to now having people legitimately sit here and say, maybe they're better with Davis Mills at the quarterback position? Like, what went wrong there?
Yeah, there are a couple of different factors there. I think when you have a backup like Mills, believe it or not, I feel like people don't like folks that are a bit all over the place. And I think Stroud, he is a boom or bust type player at times. And I think that rookie season, he was booming. He was booming big time. And I think given the fact that they've had such a shift in offensive coordinators, and now and that offensive line is so rickety, they're asking him to actually do Patrick Mahomes like things, like go play hero ball all the time. And Patrick Mahomes can do it. CJ Stroud ain't there yet, and he might not ever be that type of player. And that's no knock. Patrick Mahomes is Moses at quarterback. He parts the seas all the time. And so, they need stability in the worst way. And Stroud, I also think, is still finding himself as a quarterback. This 2025 season is so fascinating to me because we're looking at Sam Darnold, we're looking at Baker Mayfield, we're looking at all of these rehabilitation projects that are finding ways to thrive. And I think CJ Stroud, where he is right now, is clearly still finding himself a bit at quarterback. And the Texans are obviously invested in him in the long haul. But I'd be curious what he looks like in year 6, year 7. Maybe he needs that $300 million contract to hit, and maybe that'd make a little bit of a difference too. But I think he's still going to pay a big return on those on the investment here down the line for sure.
$300 million makes everything feel better. I feel like I would feel maybe, better at my job if I had $300 million.
Y'all, I wouldn't show up at my job. I would not be more consistent as a human being with $300 million in the bank. But go ahead.
We can at least entertain it. Maybe let's give it to us and then we'll see how we
try.
react to it. I know it feels icky and gross to ask Texans fans to root for any other team in the AFC South, but we've got the Colts and Jags coming up on Sunday. So who should Texans fans be rooting for in that divisional matchup?
That's a fascinating question. I'm sorry, man. I'm still not in a position to fully trust. Talk about rehabilitation quarterbacks. I'm not ready to commit on Daniel Jones right now. I'm just not ready to do it. But Trevor Lawrence has been the ultimate roller coaster ride. You talk about boom bust. I think C.J. Stroud as a boom bust player pales in comparison to my boy Sunshine over there at Jacksonville. And I think for the Texans, I think the Colts, the thing that they have excellence in one area. They can run the ball for sure. And I think that creates a scenario where that if you have to see them again, that creates a scenario where every possession matters and the Colts can drain the clock. And I actually didn't think Daniel Jones played terribly against the Texans defense last week. But because nobody plays good against the Texas defense. But I think if you get into a playoff scenario where possessions matter and the clock matters, I would not want to play the Colts. So I think you're hoping in this scenario that Jacksonville finds a way to squeak that out. Jacksonville's got their own challenges offensively, but I think the scarier thing is if you said which team plays their A game, Jacksonville's probably scarier, but they play their A game once every 5, and then they randomly beat the Chiefs. So I would say you probably are hoping for a Jaguars win just to get that who in my opinion should be the MVP of Jonathan Taylor. You get him out of the way and get Daniel Jones, who's also a running threat. You get him out of the way as well.
All right, before we get you out of here, I know we got a big game coming against the Chiefs. When it's all said and done, who wins the AFC South?
Look, man, I'm in Houston. I'm trying to go to Frenchie's. I'm trying to go get Truth Barbecue. Like, what are you doing to me, man? Look, this is until we talk about being afraid of the Kansas City Chiefs, and until they're out of here, we have to respect them. And I think given what the AFC South has or has not been, you pick the Houston Texans until they're dead and buried in the ground. The Texans still, in my opinion, they have the best quarterback in the AFC South. They have a proven defense that is as good as any. And to me, you do have guys over there that they've won it. They've done it before. They've actually gone through these wars, and they're actually getting healthy at the right time. I still don't necessarily trust the run game. I think that their young players need to play more between Woody Marks, Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins. They've got young dudes that can ball. And my opinion on the Texans since about week 2, week 3 of the season is hand the keys over to the young Bucks. Let them boys go. Don't treat them like rookies anymore, because those guys, Higgins in particular, those are the guys that I think are actual game changers. And you start to look at Nico Collins and Jaden Higgins, and you know who they remind me of? They remind me a bit of CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. I'm not saying that they're there yet, but I think that that's their ceiling and that's their potential. And if you can give Stroud that to go to war with every weekend, that's a terrifying thought.
You guys can read him on the Houston Chronicle. Check out all the work there. Follow him on social media at Ed the Sports Fan. Man, we really appreciate your expertise, Eddie. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for joining us. Good luck with the rest of the season. Hit the playoffs.
Hey,
got to come back, hang out with us.
Hey, man, ball guys stick together. This is what we do, man. I appreciate it.
Take it easy, brother. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. All right.
Thank you, Eddie.
Next, it's a Thursday, and that means it's time for Thirst Traps. We'll get you some of the games that are out there coming up next. It might be a trap game. It is time for America's favorite board game, not Mousetrap, no, Thirst Trap. That's right. This is Thirst Trap Thursdays, where we identify not one, but two games going into this weekend where we think an underdog will win outright, a trap game, as it were. And I'll start. I'll go first. I'll give you a trap game. Look, I broke a rule. I'll be honest, Caroline. Like we have the rule every time. No divisional games. Divisional games can't be trap games. But sometimes teams are so bad that they can be. So I'm going to take here as a wild trap game, Saints over Bucks. The Saints have played a little better lately.
Ooh.
The Bucks are beat up all over the place. The Bucks
Put
haven't
Baker
looked
in a
quite
pot
right.
of gumbo.
Oh, this is great. Look at that. The Cajun cookout.
Uh-huh.
I feel good about
It's chicken sausage and Baker.
Would you and Kellen Moore's back there chefing it? Would you sit in a pot of gumbo?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Okay.
I mean, I feel like I've eaten enough gumbo in my day that I practically have come like close enough to bathing in a pot of gumbo. But oh yeah, especially this time of year, it's freezing outside. Put me in there. Little celery, little onion, little bell pepper, little chicken, little sausage, maybe some shrimp. I don't know. I don't discriminate.
Okay. Look, your gumbo sounds delightful, although I'm not usually a big gumbo guy. But I will say this: the as I mentioned, the Bucks have played poorly of late, right? Like you and I were both on the Buck train early. That Buck train has not looked particularly good. Even a 20-17 win over the Cards didn't give me a ton of faith. They got the Saints, the Falcons, the Panthers coming up. So they got 3 straight big divisional games that will really decide where Tampa Bay is going to be the rest of this season. So then I look over at the Saints process, and again, they're 2-10. But Tyler Shuck has played a lot better than I think people realize over the course of this. And some of their recent play, like they lose a close game to the Dolphins. I'm not sure how good the Dolphins are. They did beat the Panthers a couple of weeks ago. Maybe this is the week that they just catch the Bucks by surprise.
Look, the Saints had the Bucks number for a long time. Even when Tom Brady was wearing a Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniform, the Saints still found a way to win the division. But this is a much different Saints team in 25 than it was in 2021. Saints are my team. So I loved, it's music to my ears to hear the Saints upsetting, a divisional rival. But I just think the Saints are so bad that they can't take advantage of opportunities when they might come their way. Like, I think there's bad teams that can win games. Like, I think the Browns are a bad team that can find a way to win games because they have enough talent and enough good pieces and are well coached enough. I don't think the Saints are in that. I think they are so bad. Like the Titans, I would say the Jets. I'll put the Jets in that category as well. They are such a bad football team that they can't take advantage of those kind of games. And I think the Bucks are too good of a team to get got by the Saints. So I want to believe in this. I really do. I just don't think the Saints are in that position. I think the Bucks are too good, and they're going to get healthy. Mike Evans is coming back.
Yeah, that is. I want to see what the Bucks look like healthy. Part of this is just the fact that I feel like Tampa Bay's fallen off the radar a bit. But you are right. Like when you look at some of the numbers this year, Alvin Kamara leading the team in rushing at 471 yards. Like between Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck, if they combine Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck, they still don't have a decent backup quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion. Now, I would love to see Tyler Shuck. He was a second-round pick for them. Let's see if over the course of the rest of the season, let's hold Tyler Shuck to the same standard, let's say we're holding Shedeur to in Cleveland, where everybody says, got to see him so that we know if the Browns need a quarterback. Well, that was a 5th-round pick. Tyler Shuck is a 2nd-round pick. And if the draft were today, the Saints would certainly be in position to try and draft a quarterback. So they need to find out if they have a quarterback option that they can build around, or if they just, like bad teams do, wasted a 2nd-round pick last year. So I think it's a little interesting because Kellen Moore, while we knew the Saints were going to be bad, I don't think most people expected the Saints to be this bad. And you're right. And Kellen Moore certainly doesn't have a lot to hang his hat on after 1 year as a head coach of an organization that just flat out sucks right now. But, it's thirst traps.
We should have expected that, though.
Yeah.
I don't think that's on Kellen Moore entirely.
No, I don't think it's on him
Tyler
entirely.
Shuck is their quarterback, Fitz.
He was in the building when they decided that. Like, he was in the building when they used a 2nd-round pick on him. He didn't inherit Tyler Shuck. He looked at Tyler Shuck in the 2nd round for this football team and said, sure, shuck it. Let's go for it. Like, I don't know how I feel about that,
I don't like that either. But the other option was Spencer Rattler.
That's fair. But Spencer Rattler or
Hoop or poop.
Taking a 4th-round flyer on Shedeur. They could have had Shedeur before the 5th round. Just revisionist history. You've got a trap game for me. What do you got? We'll see what the picture is for this.
Yes.
I cannot wait.
Let's say I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals to beat the Buffalo Bills this weekend. This game is everything. Oh my gosh. Josh Allen, I'm just not familiar with your game.
Look, I'm going back to the gym
Haley
after the show.
You lucky woman.
Congratulations to everybody. I mean, this is
wow.
We're speechless on this show. I mean, to be clear, if I ever look like that, and I'm on a fitness journey, Caroline, if I ever look like that, that is the exact outfit I'm going to wear on this show every day. So just be prepared. Yeah. Sparkly jacket, no shirt, looking off that's going to be me every single day.
Some nice, facial hair with your locks flowing in the wind, toss, if you will. I'm taking the Bengals to beat the Bills this weekend. Yeah, you start now. If the Bengals lose this game, it's over. Like, there is a path for the Bengals to win the AFC North, because the AFC North is totally crap. There's a path for the Bengals to win the division and make the postseason, but the Bengals have to be almost perfect, if not entirely perfect, throughout the rest of the season in order for that to still be alive. And of course, they're going to have to get some help from the Steelers and the Ravens along the way. Joe Burrow, back against the wall, must have it, gotta have it, must win kind of game. I'll take Joe Burrow in that. Like, everything, all the marbles are on the line. Granted, against a team that they have become very familiar with in the AFC. I'll take Joe Burrow in that kind of situation. Do I trust that defense? Heck no. Do I trust the Bills to be consistent week over week and look like a Super Bowl caliber team every single week? No, I do not. Because that's not what they have been. They zig, they zag, they flip, they flop. So if the Bengals getting Joe Burrow back, the way that offense can and has hummed as long as he's at the helm, the way that the Bills defense has been banged up, has been inconsistent. They just claimed Darius Slay off of waivers. Darius Slay. Isn't Darius Slay 75 years old? No disrespect to 75-year-olds. But Darius Slay, if that's what we're looking to be the savior for this defense, then I'll trust the Bengals to take advantage of a banged up, not 100% defense that the Bills have had and an inconsistent Bills team. So I'll take the Bengals.
Frankly, I was late to the production meeting, and you'd already picked this game. I'm envious of it. This is a great pick by you, and I like it. I think both of these teams should be ashamed that this is the situation we're in, right? Because you mentioned the Bengals have their backs up against the wall. I will remind everybody, so do the Bills. The Bills at 8-4 right now would be the 7 seed in the playoffs, only a game ahead of Houston. So as much as we're talking about the Bengals got to get this win, the Bills are out of wiggle room also. This is going to take a big year. And what I love about your trap game process on this too is that next week the Bills are at the Patriots in what will be the biggest game in that series in years, right? So, but to me, what is dumbfounding to me is that there's going to be a very real argument to leave the loser of this team left for dead, right? And It's just in a world where we haven't seen the year that we thought from most teams in the AFC. It is so disgusting to me that the Bills and the Bengals have been incapable of taking advantage of the open door that is there for them. And I don't have a lot of faith in this Bills team. I mean, we've seen moments where it just looks like everything clicks. And as we've said on this show, James Cook, I think, is the key. And I want to believe that anybody named James, especially James Cook, can run all over this Bengals defense, all over them. They should be able to control this. But what reason do I have to trust the Bills right now? The answer to that is not much. And you know, you look at this team and their inability to win back-to-back games. It's just they are as Jekyll and Hyde as bad football teams usually are, and they're too good to be this bad.
And that's the dumbfounding thing about the Bills. The Bengals are in this position because their starting quarterback, franchise quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks on the planet, was out for 2 months. And the defense still isn't good enough. They didn't have a good enough backup plan, and that all falls at the heels of Duke Tobin, the general manager of the Cincinnati Bengals, and Zach Taylor as well, because I think he's kind of a dum-dum. But you can at least rationalize why the Bengals are 4-8 and why their backs are up against the wall and why it probably feels more likely than not that the Bengals for the second year in a row will miss the postseason. What's the Bills' excuse? I just talked about the defensive injuries. I get that. I understand that. Trey White's been on and off the field. And Milano's been off and on the field. Like you can point to defensive lapses and say, okay, that injury is why why we were giving up more points and more yards than we would at full strength. But still, like that's not a good enough rationalization for me for the Bills to now be staring down, having to go on the road in the playoffs.
Yeah, as I keep pointing out, I've spent years screaming, hey, you can't judge Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson for their lack of Super Bowls in a Patrick Mahomes era because, frankly, Patrick Mahomes is dominating it, and there's just no wiggle room to really get one in the AFC. This year?
Not this year.
This year there should have been. This should have been the year where Lamar or where Josh or where Joe somehow turns around and vaults their team to the AFC Championship, vaults their team into the Super Bowl, gets that coveted ring and the opportunity to really separate themselves from a bunch of great quarterbacks in the AFC that may never have reasonable expectations year in and year out for Super Bowl wins. This should have been the year. And the fact that none of them have been on teams that have played well enough is just absolutely gross to me. All right, we got a lot more to get to in hour number 2. Coming up next, we'll get the thoughts on the Pittsburgh Steelers from Joey Mulinaro. We'll see how he feels about his favorite team next. Yahoo Sports Daily. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. Aaron Rodgers turned 42. We don't need to know this man's another year older right now. That from Joey Mulinaro. He's not wrong, and he hangs out with us now. Comedian, Pittsburgh Steelers fan, a diehard fan, and I'm excited to get your thoughts on this because it's been a bit of a wild ride. All right, so how are we feeling about the Steelers and the expectations for the rest of the year so far, Joey?
Guys, good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm kind of just spiraling into nothingness as we head towards the holidays here. Just much doom and gloom. Another December collapse. Mike Tomlin likes to talk about unleashing hell in December, and the hell is actually being unleashed on Steelers fans. That's what he didn't tell you in the press conference. So it's dark times over here, but you know what? We trudge on, and I'll have my terrible towel ready to go this weekend in Baltimore.
Look, Fitz is a Raiders fan. I am a Saints fan. Welcome to our football fan therapy. We are so happy to have you here as we swim into the sea of suck. But I want to touch on that guy because you have been pretty vocal about it being time for the Steelers to move on from Mike Tomlin. I don't disagree with you, but in your own words, why is it time for the Steelers to find a fresh start with a new head coach?
I'm glad you said that you don't disagree because there's so many folks like yourselves who are in the national media, if you will, who I don't know if it's just they don't follow the games or they just tune in to see what Coach T has to say in his cool press conferences. But like, I have a hard time understanding the ridiculous aspect that so many of the national media have, after fans were chanting "Fire Mike Tomlin" and booing him and everything this past weekend. So many people up in arms. Oh, how can they do this? I don't understand. It's a ridiculous notion. Is it ridiculous? 6-11 his last 17 games. Was 10-3 last year. Finished 10-8. A blowout loss to your rival on the road. 300 yards rushing on the ground. Hasn't won a playoff game since the Obama administration. Hasn't been on a playoff run in about 10 years. The list goes on and on. This year alone, they've blown 4 halftime leads. If they blow another one, which chances are they probably will in the last 5 games, that'll be the franchise record for the most in a season. So I have a disconnect with where everybody says, oh, it's Mike Tomlin. What do you mean you're going to fire him? With what the reality actually is. And the reality is that it's stale, that his way of doing things is not working. The proof is in the pudding, and it's just time for a breakup. Right? It's like my friend Colin Cowherd says, like, don't have a baby to save the marriage, right? Like, okay, don't draft the quarterback for Mike Tomlin to try to save the marriage of you and Mike Tomlin. It's just time to part ways. That's okay. And also this other notion of, well, why would you let him go? Because he's going to get hired in 2 seconds if you let him go. Okay, so the best relationships are known for staying in them just because you don't want to see that person with somebody else, right? Everybody famously knows that when you're in a relationship that's going nowhere, that has been successful before, but it's kind of toxic now, and it kind of just, you're not feeling the same, and it kind of just sucks. Yeah, well, I don't want to break up with that person because, man, somebody's going to be sliding into their DMs real quick right after this, and I don't want that to happen. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So it's just, look, you can have on one hand appreciation and respect for what Mike Tomlin has done. I have that. On the other hand, you could say, you know what? It's just best to break ties, to start over with the draft in Pittsburgh in 2026, maybe take a quarterback and start with a new voice and completely rebuild from there. And that's where I am, right in the middle. That's not crazy, right?
It's not crazy. I think, Joey, for me, part of the math, it's hard. And this is what I said coming into the season, in fairness. If this was supposed to be the bounce back year for Tomlin, how did they expect that to happen with Aaron Rodgers? Like you put a Band-Aid on just a massive wound at the quarterback position with an old guy that I thought was washed coming into the season. So like for me, I don't know why we're surprised by the result we're getting, given the fact that they didn't really solve the quarterback problem, and that was such an issue coming last year. So like, what were your expectations coming into this season?
Here's another disconnect with folks who perhaps maybe don't follow week in, week out, day to day. Mike Tomlin, like Bill Parcells famously said, would love to be able to have the ingredients and cook them too. Mike Tomlin is front and center with picking the ingredients for this roster. You see him on this side. He's excited to bring in Russell Wilson. He's excited to bring in Aaron Rodgers. That's his guy that he's whispering to in the post game after the Jets game last year. He had the meeting with Aaron Rodgers for 6.5 hours in Pittsburgh in May or June of this year. He picks the ingredients, man. It's not like this thing where it's just like Coach T rolls in there and, oh, well, I guess this is the hand that I'm dealt. No, he's dealing the hand and he's playing the game too.
I don't everything you're saying is totally logical and makes a ton of sense. What should they have done? What could they have done at quarterback? It'd be I'm not defending the fact that the result hasn't been good enough.
Here's the thing.
Here's the path to a quarterback.
That's fine. Okay, but what I should have said on top of what I just said is that commit to something. Mike Tomlin and this organization right now, they refuse to commit to the path to get you anywhere but mediocrity right stuck in the middle. They're so stubborn and arrogant at the moment to refuse to let their guard down and get past this kind of 10-win-ish, make it into the playoffs, be right there in December, for the sake of pride or for the sake of the Steeler way or whatever that means now. They're so stubborn and arrogant at the moment that they can't just accept the fact that they need to cut down their guard and commit to a path to getting that quarterback. If Mike Tomlin and Art Rooney and this organization a handful of years ago would have said, you know what? Time to wipe our hands. We're going to do it the tough way, and it's going to be rough. And yeah, we may feel like the Raiders. We may feel like the Saints for a couple of years. But gosh darn it, at least there's a path to something. Then you know what? I probably wouldn't be as harsh on Mike Tomlin and the organization right now. I probably would have a little bit more of a belief in him and say, hey, you know what? Good for you. You plan to commit to something. You committed to the rebuild. You wanted to go after a quarterback, and this is the best way to do it. And they didn't do that. They refused to let their stubbornness go down, and they said, you know what? No, we're going to do things our way, and we're going to middle around them in the middle, and we're going to slap Band-Aids on things, and we're going to bring in high-end old free agents on the defensive side of the ball, old quarterbacks. And you know what? We're just going to roll a ball out there and hope TJ Watt gets a strip sack every game to save our behinds at the end of the day. That's the problem. If they would have said, to your point, if they would have committed to a real plan to go for quarterback, then this would be different. I wouldn't be so harsh on Mike Tomlin and the Steelers right now, but they didn't. They decided to be stubborn, and they decided to be arrogant, and they decided to say, hey, we're just going to try to be in the mix, and we're going to try to stick right around in the middle. And really, in all reality, it's getting you nowhere, just as it is right now. 6-6, going back to Baltimore, the place that kicked you out of the playoffs last year in embarrassing fashion.
Joey, I am of the belief that being in the mucky middle is even worse than being terrible in sports. Because at least when you're terrible, there's a path to getting better. You can get a top 3 pick and find your quarterback of the future. But everything that you're saying sounds so similar to so many of the conversations that I was having. I was doing sports talk radio in Nashville for several years toward the end of Mike Vrabel's tenure with the Titans. Same thing. I said the exact same thing. If somebody else wants to hire him tomorrow, let him. It's run its course here. It's done here. It's over here. Now, in hindsight, Mike Vrabel might be coach of the year, coaching a quarterback that's in MVP contention, a team that has the best record in football, and the Titans have been absolutely miserable since. Are you on board for that, if that is what happens, if and when the Steelers decide to change course, move on from Mike Tomlin, and embrace the suck for a few years?
Yeah, I think you have to be. I mean, I think, it gets brought up a lot, but I think the perfect scenario that you look at, the most comparable, is the Andy Reid situation in Philadelphia. I mean, he was there for 15 years? I mean, a long time. He was there in Philadelphia, had a lot of success. But at the end of his tenure there, it just felt like time for both sides. He moves on, goes over to the AFC with Kansas City. It worked out well. It's worked out fairly well for the Eagles too, right? Like, I think that if you ask a lot of Steelers fans right now, they would say, yeah, we would trade positions with where the Eagles are. Sure, they had some down years in between, but they've been to 3 Super Bowls and they've won 2 since that time. So look, again, this is kind of what I was mentioning about, so you're not going to make a move because you're afraid of what could happen on the other side. I don't want to live, like Mike Tomlin says, I don't want to live in my fears. I don't want to live in the fear that Mike Tomlin's going to move on and go coach the Giants and have a lot of success there. and be afraid of that and afraid that we can't make the right decision. Put some belief in yourself. You're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're the Roonies. Put some belief in yourself that you're going to make that fourth hire in the last 60 years, and it's going to be the one that moves you, for the next 20. Don't sit here and say, I don't know, he could be successful somewhere else. That's chicken blank. That's absolute chicken blank right there. Believe in yourself, man. Be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Go out there and lay it on the line.
Can't play football scared?
Joey, we could talk to you about this for hours. It's endless debate.
I know. I'm sorry. I got really fired up, and
it's your team.
Joe, and look, this is something I'm always honest about. Like, part of the reason I get fired up about it is because in my life as a Raiders fan, since Tomlin was hired, I've watched 11 head coaches. I've seen 11 head coaches. So my fear for every organization that says, hey, I'd rather suck, because that's exactly what I said. When the Raiders lost the Super Bowl, I looked at my friends and said, I'd rather suck than keep losing in the AFC Championship game in the Super Bowl the way they did 4 straight years. It was such a heartbreak for me. And then I watched double-digit losses for double-digit years consecutively. Yeah. So that's always my concern. But I hear you. Like, it's maddening no matter where you are. If you're in the sea of suck, you want to be in mediocrity. If you're in mediocrity, you'll take the sea of suck. Like, we're all just trying to chase Super Bowls. It's amazing. But in addition to the sports content that we could talk to you about all day, every day, you are an epic stand-up comedian. We're all huge fans. We were excited to come in on the show because obviously – we love your work. Everybody loves your work. So let's talk a little bit about it. You got a show coming up in Chicago in 3 weeks, 12/22. You see there, the fakest week of the year, Zany Chicago. Tell everybody a little bit about what's going on there.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you saying all that. These Guys Live, that's me and Benedict Polizzi, the reality TV star, my buddy I grew up with, and we've been making content, doing videos together now for almost a decade. We do a show together, and so every now and then we like to go out and do a live show together. We did one in Indy last year, and it was really successful, and so we decided to go up to Chicago this year. And so looking forward to it. Me and him have both performed there individually at Zanies in Chicago. Both were sellouts, I'd like to say. So we'll like to have the same thing happen, Chicago show out for us there. But me and him up on stage laughing, being goofballs. Everybody wear your best jersey. Hopefully a lot of Rex Grossman's in the house. Maybe some Nathan Bashers. We're big into those. So come on out. Like we said, the fakest week of the year, nothing's happening. I know it's Monday night. Yeah, but 12/23, what are you doing on December 23rd on a Tuesday? You're not doing jack, right? So come out, Chicago. It's going to be a blast, and hope to see everybody there.
Can have fun on school nights. There's no rules around here.
Yeah.
One thing that you are so excellent at is impressions. And we all know it's Aaron Rodgers' birthday. Very publicly talked about how old Aaron Rodgers is. So we're going to go play a little game. We're going to go through a list of these people, and we're going to have you wish Aaron Rodgers a very, very happy 42nd birthday in each of their voices, if you're down for that.
Okay. Just a forewarning. I have been battling a little bit of a cold bug sickness here. I don't know if you can tell in my nasally here. So I will, for you guys, I'll try to power through and make this the best I can. Let's go.
Okay, Let's get it. First and foremost, happy birthday, Aaron Rodgers, from Chris Collinsworth.
Boy, 42 years old for Aaron Rodgers. You know, I look at Aaron Rodgers and I say, you know, here's a guy that looks like he's still 22 when he's out there playing. You know, I know the naysayers say, yeah, it looks like an old man, but he sure looks superb to me. There is no doubt about it. Happy birthday to you, Aaron. Here's the 22 more years playing football.
God, you're so amazing. What about give us Andrew Luck next? What do you got on Andrew Luck?
You guys got me?
Yeah, we got you. Andrew Luck.
We got you.
Oh, shoot.
You still have us? There we go.
Andrew Luck? Andrew Luck. Oh, wow. Big happy birthday to someone who I've always admired. You know, West Coast guy, goes to Cal, and I'm at Stanford now. That's one of the reasons I wore number 12. It is. So, big happy birthday to him.
and hope he gets a lot of cupcakes and good things for his big 42nd birthday. Some people say I look 42, but I only retired when I was 27, so still plenty of time left for him to play, for sure.
It's so good. The lips and the eyes. Just an instant lock in. All right, Mahomes. Happy birthday, Aaron Rodgers from Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody loves Aaron Rodgers and what he's done for the game. And so just, a huge shout out to him. And, people say that, people throw the ball like me now, but really everybody throws the ball like Aaron Rodgers. So good for you, man. Happy birthday. I know that you've dated and hung out with a lot of famous people, but you didn't hang out with Taylor Swift like I have. So happy birthday, man. Have a good one.
Oh, my God. What about Saban? Can you give us Saban?
Well, Aaron, you know what you get for your birthday? Being 42 years old, you get nothing. That's the power of nothing. Because when you're 42, you get nothing. Kind of a lot like what you've been bringing the Steelers offense, nothing. All right, so happy birthday to you. Everybody wants to make it a big deal for you, but remember, as you get older, you get nothing.
All right.
Spectacular work by you, dude. Really appreciate you coming on. Zanies, December 22nd, Chicago. Don't miss it. Got to check it out. Joey, appreciate your fandom. Appreciate the great football talk on it, too. And thanks for making us all happy. Like, it's just the minute we knew you were coming on the show, we were all super stoked. Massive fans. So thanks for joining us today.
Appreciate you guys. Fitz, been watching you for a long time, back to the Golic days and everything, and great to make friends of both of you. So hope to talk soon. Sorry for getting so fired up about the Steelers, but that's fandom, baby. So appreciate you guys, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you.
You too, brother.
Appreciate
Thank you so
as
much
well.
for checking them out.
See you guys.
Oh, nobody does it better. Coming up next, what in the heck is going on at Penn State? We'll get an answer for you. New. Penn State has fallen outside the top 100 in the Rivals Industry Team recruiting rankings with just 2 commits remaining. James Franklin has flipped 10-plus PSU recruits, and Virginia Tech currently ranks 25th. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports Daily. I get it. I understand that Penn State needed to move on from James Franklin. I understand why Penn State fans were passionate about moving on from James Franklin. I can say all of those things and at the same time say, Caroline, that I think that this move, the separation from James Franklin, and now the inability to find anyone that can come in and take the job has set Penn State back in ways that they never could have imagined. Penn State is no longer a desirable job, and to me, they've now become the mucky middle, the irrelevant portion of college football. In the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be talking about who Penn State used to be, not who Penn State is, because this entire process has gone so off the rails.
I think we have to ask ourselves, how good of a job is Penn State right now in today's college football? A quote-unquote good job, I think, is being redefined. Now, Indiana's a great job. Who would have said that 10, 15 years ago? Vanderbilt's a great job. Who would have said that ever? Penn State is in the middle of nowhere. It's really difficult to get to, and it's freezing cold. Okay, that's been a thing that's happened, before NIL, before transfer portal. That's been a thing since the beginning of time. I think it's fair to say that Penn State will always be viewed as the third best team in the Big Ten. And now the way that Indiana is ascending, it's not just a one-off. It feels like Indiana is here to stay as long as Kurt Cignetti is at the helm. Well, now Penn State's the fourth best job at best, or the fourth best team in the Big Ten. But don't take my word for it. Take Kalani Sitake's word for it. He wanted to stay at BYU, where there are guardrails up, faith-based guardrails that exist at BYU. Lane Kiffin talked in his opening press conference about how there were 4 jobs that were, or 4 schools that were vying for him. We knew it was LSU, we knew it was Ole Miss, we knew it was Florida. And Ross Dellinger reported, or maybe speculated, that Penn State was the 4th one. Lane Kiffin wasn't even in contention for the Penn State job. The Penn State job has yet to be filled. I think that's for a reason, that we've had so much, coaching carousel madness, and yet Penn State is still the one, without a date to the prom. I don't know if Brian Hartline was interviewing with Penn State, or he was even a candidate for the Penn State job, but he took the South Florida job, a group of 5 job. So maybe he wasn't in contention for Penn State, and South Florida was the biggest name that came knocking. Maybe he was in contention for the Penn State job, but he wanted to go to South Florida instead. So you don't have to take my word for what I think the Penn State job is. Just look at what we already know. Just look at where we are right now with Penn State. Everybody else has filled their coaching vacancy, but not you. So I think that we have to take a step back and evaluate how good of a job is Penn State. And we need to realize that the quote-unquote great jobs in college football, that gap between the great jobs and the okay jobs, has been shrinking.
Well, and I mean, you mentioned Hartline. I'll double down with Jeff Brom, head coach of Louisville football, who decided to stay at Louisville rather than go. I'm not talking about took a job where maybe there's a group of 5 path to a playoff. No, he chose to stay at Louisville rather than go to Penn State. And every single time one of these coaches rebuffs any offer from Penn State, the immediate sort of social media reaction is, well, they're waiting for a really big announcement. What if just realistically, you are who you are now? I tell you all the time, Caroline, I don't love ranking teams. I like putting teams on shelves instead. So, what's top liquor? What's well liquor? Where are we, right? You mentioned where the Big Ten is. If you right now want to talk about where you can win, where there's money, where you can recruit, where you can have success, Indiana has become one of those. So, Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, USC, they're all in a tier. We're barely removed from a Michigan national championship. You can talk me into that. The fact is, Penn State no longer belongs in that conversation. If we want to talk about the shelves of teams in the Big Ten, Penn State now belongs on the Illinois shelf, the Nebraska shelf. And I'm old enough to remember when Nebraska was on TV every single Saturday in the 90s because they were a prominent college football program. So don't sit here and tell me it can't happen because of the brand of Penn State. Yes, it can happen. Yes, it is happening. Every time we see a new school emerging that's taking attention, that's flipping recruits, that's spending money, whether that's Indiana or whether that's a school like Vandy, every time we see one of those, we have to acknowledge there's only so many seats at the table for prominent programs. And the fact is, if we were doing the grown-ups table and the kids table, I'm not sure Penn State in this current iteration deserves a seat at either. Penn State just walks in the door and hopes that somebody gives them leftovers. If you have a recruiting class like this, it leaves you behind for years. And if your answer is, well, we'll fix it in the transfer portal, A, that's more expensive. B, you got to convince kids that they want to transfer there. C, you got to have a coach they want to transfer for. Penn State right now has absolutely nothing to offer anybody as a reason of hope. And I understand that James Franklin wasn't winning them national championships, but you may have just gone from at least being part of the college football playoff conversation to essentially becoming one of the more invisible, prominent, used-to-be programs in all of the sport.
And, we just talked to Joey Mulinaro about how he wants the Steelers to move on from Mike Tomlin, that it's time, and that he has to be okay with embracing the suck that might come with firing a legendary head coach because it's just run its course. I understand Penn State's fans' frustrations with James Franklin. He was 1-15 against top 5 teams. He was 4-21 against top 10 teams. He was 15-30 against top 25 teams. And even when Penn State found themselves in the Final Four in the college football playoff last year, well, they had to beat Boise State in order to get there. They had to beat SMU in order to get there. It's not like Penn State took down absolute giants of college football in order to get to the Final Four. And once they ran into a giant of college football in Notre Dame, they lost. So I do understand Penn State fans' frustration that it had just bubbled over too much, that if James Franklin's thing was, well, we can beat the bad teams, but we can't beat the good teams, well, then James Franklin turned around and lost to UCLA and Northwestern. So now you can't even beat the bad team. So what can you do? So I do get Penn State fans' frustrations. But you have to be okay with the suck. I will always use Auburn as a cautionary tale for any team that is ready to move on from a head coach that's had a lot of success. Because Auburn thought they could do better than Gus Malzahn. Gus Malzahn could beat Alabama, but he couldn't beat Alabama enough. Gus Malzahn could beat, the big teams, the good teams, could win the big games, but just couldn't do it enough. And Auburn said, we can be better. We're better than that. We can do better than you. So then they hired Brian Harsin. We saw how that turned out, didn't we? It was a total and complete disaster. So what was the answer? Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze won at Ole Miss. Hugh Freeze was able to beat Alabama in back-to-back years at Ole Miss. He can do it here. Yeah, I think he went to a bowl game maybe once, and it was the Music City Bowl. No disrespect to the Music City Bowl. Love my people there. But it's not like Auburn was ever in the conversation for a national title. Now, Auburn's days of being a national powerhouse and a team that you fear to have on your schedule feel so long gone. So I will tell that as a cautionary tale to any college football fan that says we can do better than this guy. Well, as long as you're okay with becoming irrelevant over the next decade, because that might happen. It might not. It might be the best thing that you ever did for your program. You might find the guy that gets you past the hump, and you feel very justified in wanting to move on from that guy. But you also might not, because right now James Franklin has Virginia Tech recruiting humming, and Penn State's got nobody. That's a scary place to be.
If you had to bet everything you have on the next 3 years, who's going to be better, Virginia Tech or Penn State? The next 5 years, who's going to be better, Virginia Tech or Penn State? I have so much more belief in Virginia Tech right now for a myriad of reasons. It's obviously easier to win where they are than it is in the Big Ten. But also, I mean, what did the message that Penn State sent every single coach that might want that job is, we expect a national championship or bust, which I love. I love that. That's what every fan's going to come and say, well, that's what it should be. Yeah, okay. There are very few coaches that actually accomplish that. I'm pretty squarely on record with you talking about what I think are lofty expectations with Lane Kiffin at LSU, right? So I'm looking at it saying, yeah, I get Penn State says we're championship or bust. Problem is you're now bust. And Virginia Tech, when you sit there and say they've landed 5 next 300 commits through James Franklin, James Franklin's there. He's humming, he's cooking. They've got an NIL budget. Like right now, if I had to bet for the next 5 years on James Franklin or Penn State, I'm taking James Franklin, and it's not even close.
Well, and let's not act like Virginia Tech is any sort of rinky-dink college football program that James Franklin has to bring from the depths of college football. Like, let's not forget the Frank Beamer days. They were a long time ago, but Virginia Tech was and can still be a powerhouse. If Indiana and Vanderbilt can be in college football conversations, Virginia Tech absolutely can too. So I'm with you. I think it is Virginia Tech because James Franklin can recruit. And sure, James Franklin couldn't beat Ohio State and Michigan on a consistent basis. I understand that. That was a point of contention for Penn State fans. I don't blame you for that. But there's not an Ohio State or a Michigan in the ACC. Who scares you in the ACC? The ACC might get left out of the college football playoff as a whole. Clemson isn't what it used to be. Florida State kind of looks like a dumpster fire under Mike Norvell. Miami is 10-2 in their, when they looked like they were the best team in America at one point. So James Franklin doesn't have the same kind of uphill battles that existed for him in the Big Ten. So I'm with you. With the talent that he can attract to Virginia Tech, I do think Virginia Tech will have more success relative to the expectations at their program than Penn State will have.
I feel like in the next couple of years, on that Saturday that always seems to come in the middle of fall, where you flip over at noon and you're like, all right, what's the game? And you realize it's Penn State versus Iowa, you're going to roll your eyes. Not just at Iowa finally, but at both sides of it. It's unfortunate for Penn State.
3-0 final score.
Yeah, it's Sad Valley now, not Happy Valley. All right, speaking of college football, for all this conversation about what could be, over the weekend, we can have an ACC title game that changes college football forever. We'll tell you why next. The idea that the highest ranked team in a Power 4 conference, Miami, can miss the ACC title game, and the CFP is embarrassing for the sport. Conference realignment messed up everything by making these leagues way too big. Chris Vanini with that concept, because for anyone that hasn't paid attention, when you look at the rankings right now, Miami obviously would be ranked in the top 12, but Miami will not make the college football playoff in all likelihood because they don't play in the ACC championship game because of the tiebreakers in conference and the way the schedule played out. It is instead Duke, a very bad Duke team in the eyes of many, that will be playing Virginia for the ACC championship game. And here's the thing, Caroline, the outcome of this game could change college football forever. If Duke wins the ACC championship game, and then as such, they find their way into this college football playoff, and or they find themselves not in the college football playoff, and we end up having to bring in 2 group of 5 schools because those conference champions are higher ranked, that is such a disaster. disaster for college football, because what you're going to end up with is a North Texas or a James Madison getting beat 70-0 by an Indiana in the first round of the playoffs, while a team that actually deserved that bit, a team that is clearly a top 12 team, is going to be sitting at home. The ramifications of that, to me, is an immediate meeting from the Big Ten, the SEC, saying, if you want us to stay in your sandbox, you're going to change these rules. We're going to have some sort of a floor that must be met for every team in the college football playoff, because you can't tell me that the SEC isn't flat out pissed off that Vanderbilt is going to be sitting at home on a playoff that, frankly, we could end up seeing North Texas playing in. We could see the random schools that most people look. UNLV. I have a UNLV helmet behind me. They have a 1.6% chance of making the college football playoff. There is no world where this year's UNLV team is more deserving than Miami or Vanderbilt or Texas or any of these schools you want to pop in here. If the ACC champion ends up being Duke, it will break this system, and they will have to change it.
The system is so broken. The fact that Duke is even in the ACC championship game. I mean, a lot of programs go 7-5 and they fire their coach. Speaking from experience, because that's what my team did. Now Duke is 7-5. They're competing for a conference championship game and have a path to, an opportunity at winning a national championship. What world does that make sense? So let's say if Duke does win the ACC championship game, though, let's remember there is still a path that even a ACC champion Duke team gets out of the playoff entirely. Because if Duke is left out of the top 25, then the higher ranked conference champions will get in. It's not a powerful group of 5 conference champion that get into the college football playoff. It is the 5 highest ranked conference champions. So a JMU could potentially find themselves in if Duke wins. So if JMU finds themselves in the college football playoff, let's say even if Duke finds themselves in the college football playoff, if I'm Texas, I'm pissed. If I'm Vanderbilt, I'm pissed. If I'm Miami, I'm pissed. So, they have every right to be pissed that either a 5-loss Duke team or JMU, no disrespect to JMU, gets into the college football playoff.
The problem through all of this, too, is look, if I were the czar of college football, this is a very, very easy system. I want the 12 best teams. And I will say loudly, y'all, I don't care where they come from. I want the 12 best. This is not the NCAA men's or women's basketball tournament where there are so many bids that, frankly, if teams get left out, it's not as shocking to everybody. Although I've argued for years that for smaller conferences, sometimes having your conference tournament champion in instead of your regular season champion can even hurt your conference there. But the fact is, when you only have 12 teams total available at your disposal, I want the 12 best. I don't care if all 12 come from the Big Ten. I don't care if all 12 come from the SEC. And this is where people say, yeah, but it's magical that they have a chance. And some of our experts, I know Godfrey has said before, I want a world where these guys can get into the tournament. I personally don't care. I don't think we need to change the bar of expectation of what it means to get into the college football playoff just because you play at a different school. I want 12 best. If we're not going to give me 12 best, though, if that's not real, they're going to have to figure out some sort of a system that doesn't reward teams that simply shouldn't be in the conversation. There's such a huge difference between Boise State and Ashton Genty. Last year, we were looking at a Heisman Trophy finalist on a great team that people wanted to see in the college football playoff, and that was great. It was fun for a year in the playoffs, but I even said then, you can go back and watch some of our Yahoo content. The problem was going to be what happens when we watch the group of 5 get murdered in the first round. That's what I think we're going to see this year. So when we walk into these first round games, especially again in a year particularly where BYU might get left out of this thing, that Vandy and Texas are already left out of this thing, that Miami fans are screaming and hollering, it's not about whether or not Texas should have lost some of these games along the way. To me, it's very clearly about one thing. One thing alone. If Duke wins the ACC championship game, my only question is this. Is Miami better than Duke today? The answer is yes. Is BYU better than Duke today? The answer is hell yes. So we're just letting 12 is still a very exclusive number. The answer here is not expansion. The answer here is not trying to let more teams in. The answer here is just making sure that there is some sort of a floor that keeps people out that just simply aren't good enough to be there. I don't care. Maybe get rid of championship games altogether. Just let me have a regular season conference champion. I don't care. There's got to be a way to stop teams from Duke from even having a shot at being part of this thing.
Well, Fitz, they won't do that. And you know why they won't get rid of conference championship games? It makes money. And ESPN sells. Thank you. Yep. That's ESPN. That's Jimmy Pitaro just making it rain on all these conference championship games. Like, it makes the networks money. If your question is anything in college football, the answer is probably money. Why is this process like this? Why do we do this? It's because it makes money. And the reason why the process is what it is for the college football playoff is because they want to make sure that the conference championship games still matter. Because if they don't matter, nobody's going to watch. And if nobody watches, you're not going to make money off of it. You're not going to be able to sell those ad dollars. I just looked, just like for funsies, I looked at what the ticket prices would be for an SEC or a Big Ten championship. Minimum get-in price for either of them is $500. That's insane. And these conference championship games, Indiana, Ohio State, a matchup for the ages. Alabama, Georgia, quickly becoming one of the best rivalries in college sports because they always play when something big is on the line. That makes money. So as long as they exist, I think that they should matter. I do agree that if you're going to have them, they need to matter. They need to bear at least a little bit of weight. But this process also needs to have at least a semblance of legitimacy. If you're going to have a playoff with teams that all can actually win a national championship, that all have either earned their way in or have proven that, look, we can play with the best of them. Duke can't. Duke is 7-5 in a crap ACC that nobody values. So, I heard you, talking about Vandy and Texas and Miami and BYU. If and when all of those teams are playing at home and JMU and Duke are competing in the college football playoff, you can just say that the system is broken. I think we all know that the system is broken because it is.
And I don't think it's a bad thing to just admit that there are some teams that can't compete, right? Like, this is just a part of life.
Like Duke.
There are times in everything that happen in life where you have to just admit that there are the haves and the have-nots, and that's just the way it works. Look, I cut my teeth before I ever worked in sports in the music business. Nobody ever came in and said, yeah, but we want to make sure every single guitar player has a real shot at being in a number one hit band. Like, it just doesn't exist. You either get in or you don't get in, and at some point it's a little bit of luck, it's a little bit of meritocracy, it's a little bit of right place, right time. Like, that's life. I don't think college football is suddenly worse for the wear if we acknowledge coming into the season that there are a bunch of teams that don't have a real shot at a national championship. Having a shot at the playoff doesn't mean you have a shot at the national championship. And we certainly accept that in college basketball. I mean, for anyone that says, well, it's a sport where everybody has a chance. Okay, then tell me the last time a school like MTSU just came in Middle Tennessee State, for any of you paying attention, just came in and suddenly won the Natty one year. Like, no, they have a shot at the tournament, and it's fun to go to the tournament games and then eventually get your ass kicked. Like, really what we're doing is we're allowing one of these teams that's not really deserving to have this sense of hope that they can get in there. And when they get in there, even if they absolutely, a miracle happens and they win a first-round game, are any of the teams that we're talking about, do we believe that the James Madisons, the North Texas is the current version of Boise, the current version of UNLV, the Tulanes we've been talking about this year, Memphis that we tried to put into the playoff? Do we believe that any of them could have gone on a roll and beaten Alabama and then Indiana and then Georgia to win a national? No. The answer is no. So all we're doing is delaying the inevitable of the end of their season so that they feel like they're included in something. I don't need inclusion. I just want great games. I want to tune into playoff games because you mentioned money. What's really going to stink for everybody, where ESPN is going to lose money, is when nobody watches a first-round game that is an absolute bludgeoning. And that's the inevitability we're going to be facing.
I think the ACC is also facing a really scary area right now because short-term implications is the ACC could get left out of the playoff entirely. Long-term implications is the gap just continues to grow even more between the ACC, the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12. Because the difference between the TV revenue that the ACC gets versus the SEC and the Big Ten, The difference is millions every single year, and the ACC is stuck in their grant of rights agreements with ESPN. And in a world in college football where money has never been more important than it is right now, the difference of millions year after year after year only creates a bigger and bigger gap. You are wondering why North Carolina, Clemson, and Florida State went out of the ACC? Because it's a sinking ship. And so year over year, it only compounds more and more. And the ACC finds itself in even more of a difficult predicament where a Power Four conference is not even able to compete with not just the SECs and the Big Tens out there, but the American Conference. The American Conference with Memphis and Tulane feels even more competitive than the ACC does right now. So that's a very scary position for the ACC to be in. Not to mention playoff revenue that they're going to miss out on if, in fact, the ACC is left out of the playoff this season entirely. That's millions of dollars.
It's going to be a weekend full of chaos, and we can't wait for all of it. All right, coming up next, it's time for a little bit of what? What the fudge is going on in some of these places? We get to some of the weirdest stories in sports next. Multi-platinum hip-hop artist Thurs't has committed to play football at Syracuse. His hit favorite song has topped 330 million views on YouTube, which brings us to what the fudge is happening out here. Some of the craziest stories in all of sports. I just like making the guys nervous behind the scenes on whether or not I can be a professional. All right, so when you got a double platinum rapper committing to a D1 school, what's that make you say, Caroline?
Heck yeah! I love this. I mean, Syracuse is busting at the seams with stars. First, it's Thurs't, now Cayenne Anthony, Carmelo Anthony's son. I mean, like, Syracuse is like the Walk of Fame out here. I didn't realize upstate New York had it like that, but I love this. Get you a man that can do both. He can rap, he can play college football. Flau'jae does it. She's a rapper. She plays college basketball. I love this. Here for it.
My only concern is the aux cord in the locker room. Safety, I believe. The only concern I have here is the aux cord in the locker room, because like when you've got a multi-platinum artist in the locker room, in the gym, like does that person always get to decide? Like, what if you don't have the same musical taste? What if you're super into, I don't know, gospel? Like you like working out while you've got like a whole hallelujah choir going in the background. Like, and it's hard
Put your
to do.
headphones
Like,
in.
maybe he's not. Well, I mean, there's something about, some people like being the brotherhood of the gym while the metal's clanking. I sound like I'm such a man's man when I say all that. But the fact is, like, that's my only concern is like, hey, does that mean, and then is he always on the spot? Like, Does he always have to, like, every time a beat goes on somewhere, does the whole team look at him and expect, like, is he expected to spit out bars just to make sure that everybody gets hyped before every game? Or does he do that as a concept? Maybe this is an NIL opportunity. Maybe he pre-game concerts, gets paid, puts on a little show right before the actual game. I'm in for this. Like
Ludacris before the UNC Clemson game. It's going to be 2C does a pre-game concert and then has to turn around, run to the locker room, put his uniform on, and then go play. He's like Hannah Montana. He's living a double life. I'm not going to put him in a box. He can. No,
that's fair. I now need Syracuse to be on game day as soon as possible so they can do one of those field interviews with him, and he can just show everybody what he's got live on air. I like this. All right, what about this next one? Jordan Hudson has filed a public records request seeking emails between a senior associate athletic director at North Carolina and CBS's 60 Minutes producer. She also asked for any messages connected to interview requests for Bill Belichick. So what do we make of this? Like, it's out there. She was looking for very specific Freedom of Information Act information. What do you think, Caroline?
Jordan, sister, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told Diego Pavia. Put the phone down. Put the computer away. Turn the TV off. Just block Pablo Torre on Twitter. Protect your peace, sister. Just block out the noise. Enough of this. We're doing too much. Like, I don't know if Jordan Hudson maybe felt some inspiration from Kim Kardashian as she goes through her California bar exam process and journey. And now she's feeling like very empowered to be, fluent in legalese, but we've gotten involved in a lot of legalities recently. And from what I know, you have zero basis for any of these things. So just stop. Who amongst us hasn't foyed for love? Who has?
Jordan,
you know what? Maybe I'm a bad partner for not foying for my fiance. My fiance.
Oh, wow. Can I say this lovingly, Jordan, but touch grass, get outside, see your friends. You got a really good life right now. You're in love and he obviously is in love with you and you guys are you're killing the game. He's very successful. You've become a very public figure. It's awesome. Just enjoy this, because at the end of the day, okay, so let's say that you find out that there were requests made or that there is information out there. Now what? You're going to try and get the senior associate athletic director at North Carolina fired? All right. And how's that really going to change anything? Is that suddenly going to make everybody happier in North Carolina? Is it going to make you got to think about action and consequence. And I just don't understand the consequence that's worth it with the action. And I will just remind everybody, this is where constantly Twitter right now loves to I feel like Twitter's full of a bunch of people that read sovereign citizen stuff and believe it because they all want to come in and be like, sue for slander. Just understand that slander is very difficult legally to prove and none of this reaches that threshold. So just stop. All right, how about this one? Rumors flying around social media earlier this week. Lane Kiffin's dog, Juice Kiffin, who Lane set up an Instagram account for, would not be making the trip with Lane to LSU. May not actually even be his dog. Now we're hearing that Juice is headed to LSU. Caroline, give me call my fanaticism for the animals, so I need the update on what exactly is coming here so that I understand whether or not I want to hate Lane Kiffin. What happened?
I don't know. I'm so tired, Fitz. Lane Kiffin has been the coach of my alma mater for less than a week, and I'm already exhausted. Is the dog his? Is it not? He left the dog. Nope, never mind. He's coming back to Baton Rouge. I've heard that Juice hasn't lived with Lane Kiffin ever. He lives with a handler. So, wouldn't the dog stay with the handler? I've also heard that, Lane Kiffin didn't pay for Juice. That Ole Miss paid for Juice. So, I guess he's, property of the university and, an official mascot. I don't know. But if you start messing with dogs, I have a problem with you. So if it's not Lane Kiffin's dog, then don't take the dog to Baton Rouge. If it is your dog, take care of your freaking dog. But also, Mike doesn't like dogs. So maybe it's best if Juice just stays with his Oxford family. This is Tiger Town, USA.
Well, okay, the Juice is loose. What we need to know is exactly what's best for Juice. Because let me be very clear.
That's also not Mike.
Yeah, no, that's just a tiger.
I know my tigers. That's not Mike.
I I don't care one way or the other about Lane Kiffin. I don't really care if he's a good guy or not a good guy. He's not my favorite team's coach. I don't have to worry about that. I don't really care if he wins games or he doesn't win games because either way, it's a story for me to talk about. So I don't really care about that. I care immensely about Juice, right? Like, and in the way that I just want Juice to be happy. Now, I don't care about Juice because he's Lane Kiffin's dog, just like I don't care about Herbie's dog being in the studio with him every. Like, I don't care. I don't need you to prop your dog up every day. I just need your dog to be very happy. So as long as Juice is happy, I'm happy. If Juice is not Lane's, then Lane certainly, like, they should change his last name. But I want Juice to have his best life. And if that means that Juice is at Oxford, as long as he's being treated like a king, I am happy. Let's get to the next one. How about this? All right, we knew that the NFL Red Zone would have ads this year, but we were assured it would only be 4 15-second ads. And that's how it started, but much like taxes, once they've raised them, they never seem to give them back. Commercials continue to go bigger and bigger and bigger. Week 13, much different. 16 spots on it. What do we make of the fact we have 8 15-second double box advertisements? What the F with all of this ad creep, Caroline?
Yeah, this is a recession indicator. First, they get red zone, and then it's trickle down economics. That's exactly how that works, right? You know, it starts at the top, it starts at red zone, and then we just start getting ads everywhere. I mean, the day that we started getting ads on Netflix, I thought it's done, it's over. You know, break open your piggy banks because we're headed for a very uncomfortable economy. But yeah, this is the ultimate recession indicator. When you get red zone with ads, buckle up. This is how it starts. This is the gateway drug.
I want more. Give me all of the ads. Make it flooded with ads. I want to make everybody else miserable so that you guys actually, I don't know, have to watch a normal football game. Like, I fear for the next generation when you sit down.
Zone.
Let me. Oh, Red Zone is because Max Kellerman is my beef with Red Zone. Like, the number of times you'd hear somebody come in and be like, "Oh, Derek Carr had a great game," and it's like, no, he didn't. You didn't watch the game. You watched 4 throws on Red Zone. He had 4 nice throws. There's a difference. Like, it allows everybody in the world to have half-ass analysis on games all over the place because they don't actually watch them, right? So you got a side eye on it, and you're like, oh, yeah, I saw the 3 touchdown drives in Red Zone. Well, you didn't see the 4 interceptions that happened earlier in that game. I am anti-Red Zone. And the other part of it is, like, now I find the trickle-down effect of this is that if you sit down with your buddies and you want to watch a football game, you can't even keep anybody's attention anymore because everybody wants the scoring play. I like to watch my football games in their entirety. I like to have 8 games on at once, figure out which one I'm watching. I like to then go back and watch the condensed games. Like, I like watching football. I don't need somebody to cater to my ADHD and try to come out and try and hold my attention. I'm out on Red Zone.
Old man yells at cloud.
Thank you. Oh,
watch full games.
I'm going to be such a grumpy old man.
Of commercials in a 4-hour game because that's how I used to do it back in my day.
When are you supposed to pee when you watch Red Zone? Like, I peel. I got the bladder of a child. Like, how am I supposed? Like, I walk away. I miss.
Doesn't tinkle. Very famously, does not tinkle.
You know what? If they wanted to pay me Scott Hansen money to sit there on Sundays, I wouldn't tinkle also. We'll be back tomorrow. I will tinkle before then, but we'll be back for Yahoo Sports Daily. Have a great day. For Caroline Fenton, I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for watching us.